Imagine a world before cities, before farming, before written language. You are standing in the middle of an African forest almost 100,000 years ago. The air is warm and heavy with the scent of wild plants, while sunlight slowly filters through the dense canopy above. The trees are covered with ripe fruit. One of them finally breaks free from its branch and falls silently onto the ground. Nobody notices it. Nobody picks it up. Days turn into weeks, and the forgotten fruit slowly begins to change. Its skin wrinkles beneath the hot African sun. Its sweet aroma grows stronger with every passing day, while something invisible is quietly happening inside. Tiny organisms far too small for anyone to see are transforming the natural sugars into something completely different. No human understands this process, because no human even knows such tiny forms of life exist. Eventually, hunger overcomes curiosity. Someone notices a forgotten fruit lying beneath the tree, picks it up, studies it for a moment, and carefully takes a bite. The taste is unfamiliar, sweeter than expected, sharper than before, different from every fruit they'd have eaten in the past. At first, nothing seems unusual, but only a few minutes later, something begins to change. Their face slowly relaxes, a smile appears. Their movements become lighter and less certain, almost playful. Their laughter surprises everyone around them. The others stop what they are doing and quietly watch. No one understands what has just happened. No one can explain it. But everyone remembers the moment. Perhaps this was humanity's very first encounter with alcohol. Not inside a cup, not inside a bottle, but hidden inside a forgotten piece of fruit. Long before anyone learned how to brew beer or make wine, nature had already invented alcohol. Humans simply discovered it. Thousands of years passed before humans began to understand what they had discovered. But long before anyone knew the word alcohol, nature had already perfected the process that created it. Every ripe fruit contains sugar, and floating almost everywhere in the air are tiny wild yeasts, invisible to the human eye. When a fruit breaks open or falls to the ground, those microscopic organisms begin feeding on its sugar. As they do, they produce two things: carbon dioxide and alcohol. This process is called fermentation. It doesn't require human hands. It doesn't require tools. And it certainly doesn't require civilization. It happens naturally, wherever fruit is left untouched for long enough. In a way, the first brewer on Earth wasn't human at all. It was nature itself. Even today, this still happens in forests around the world. Overripe berries, apples, and other fruits can ferment on the ground exactly as they did tens of thousands of years ago. And humans are not the only creatures that discover them. Scientists have documented elephants eating fermented marula fruit, birds becoming disoriented after feeding on fermented berries, and even monkeys searching for fruit at exactly this stage, when it contains the highest amount of natural alcohol. Whether they seek the alcohol itself or simply the sweeter fruit is still debated. But one thing is certain: fermentation existed long before civilization. Humans simply became one more species to discover it. But discovering fermented fruit was only the beginning. Finding alcohol in nature was one thing. Learning how to create it was something entirely different. No one knows who noticed it first. Perhaps it was an elder, perhaps a hunter, or perhaps someone simply remembered where the sweetest fruit had been left. At first, it may have seemed like nothing more than coincidence. Fruit left on the ground for several days always seemed to change. It smelled different. It tasted different. And somehow, it made people feel different. The more often this happened, the harder it became to ignore. Slowly, generation after generation, people began to understand a simple idea. If nature could do this once, perhaps it could do it again. And if it could happen again, maybe it didn't have to happen by accident. Instead of waiting for fruit to fall from a tree, people could leave it themselves. Instead of hoping nature would repeat the process, they could try to repeat it on purpose. No recipes existed, no measurements, no written instructions, only observation, trial and error, and patience. Sometimes the fruit simply rotted. Sometimes animals found it first. Sometimes nothing happened at all. But every once in a while, the result was exactly the same. Sweet fruit had become something entirely new. Without realizing it, humanity had taken its first step toward making alcohol, not by inventing fermentation, but by learning how to guide it. Learning how to guide fermentation was one thing, proving that it actually happened, was another. For thousands of years, the first brewers left almost nothing behind. Wood decayed, animal skins disappeared, baskets turned to dust. Even the fruit itself was gone within days. It seemed impossible that anyone would ever discover the true beginning of alcohol, but history has a habit of hiding its greatest secrets inside the smallest details. Everything changed with the discovery of ancient pottery. Unlike wood or leather, clay could survive for thousands of years beneath the ground. At first, these old vessels looked completely ordinary: broken pots, cracked jars, nothing more. But modern science revealed something extraordinary. Even after thousands of years, tiny traces remain trapped inside the walls of the pottery, invisible to the human eye, yet preserved well enough for laboratories to analyze. Using chemical analysis, scientists began searching for ancient molecules that had survived inside the clay. What they found changed our understanding of history. Some vessels still contain traces of fermented fruit. Others preserved the chemical fingerprints of rice, honey, or wild grapes. For the first time, researchers were no longer guessing. They had evidence, real physical evidence, that people had learned to make alcoholic drinks thousands of years before written history even began. Once people learned how to control fermentation, everything began to change. Alcohol was no longer an accident. It became something people could create. Again and again, as villages grew into towns, and towns became the world's first civilizations, fermented drinks spread with them. Some of the earliest evidence comes from ancient China, where archaeologists discovered pottery containing traces of fermented rice, honey, and fruit. The vessels are nearly 9,000 years old. In Mesopotamia, beer became part of everyday life. It wasn't simply a drink. It was food. It was payment. Workers who built cities were often given beer as part of their daily ration. In ancient Egypt, brewing became a specialized craft. Large quantities of beer and wine were produced, not only for ordinary people, but also for temples, festivals, and royal ceremonies. Alcohol had become more than something people enjoy. It had become part of religion, part of trade, part of the economy. Almost every civilization that discovered fermentation eventually built traditions around it. Different ingredients, different recipes, different beliefs, but always the same remarkable process: tiny organisms quietly transforming sugar into something that changed human history. As alcohol spread across the ancient world, something became clear. People weren't drinking simply because it tasted good. In many places, the taste was actually unpleasant. Early fermented drinks were often sour, cloudy, and filled with pieces of grain or fruit. Yet people continued making them, generation after generation. Why? Part of the answer was practical. In many ancient settlements, clean drinking water wasn't always easy to find. Water could become contaminated. Rivers changed with the seasons. Wells could become unsafe. Fermented drinks, especially weak beer, were often prepared by boiling water during the brewing process. That made them safer to drink in many situations. But survival wasn't the only reason. Alcohol changed the way people felt. It could make celebrations louder, conversations easier, fear quieter, and rituals more emotional. Across different civilizations, people gave alcohol different meanings, but almost all of them agreed on one thing: it was more than just another drink. It had become part of being human. One surprising fact: humans are not the only species that intentionally consume alcohol. Scientists have observed chimpanzees sharing naturally fermented fruit, elephants eating overripe marula, and birds becoming temporarily disoriented after feeding on fermented berries. Another surprising discovery: the oldest known evidence of an alcoholic drink comes from China and is nearly 9,000 years old. Even today, the same process that created the first alcoholic drink is still happening naturally in forests all around the world. Perhaps that's the most remarkable part of this story. The recipe never changed, only the people who learned to use it. As centuries passed, alcohol continued to change. Every civilization gave it a different meaning. Some raised a cup to honor the gods, others celebrated victories, marked weddings, or simply gathered around a table with family and friends. The drink itself was never the same. Different grains, different fruits, different recipes, but the process remained unchanged. the same tiny organisms, quietly turning sugar into alcohol, exactly as they had done long before the first human ever walked the earth. Today, alcohol is one of the most widespread substances on the planet. It has inspired celebrations, religions, traditions, empires, trade, science, and endless debate. Some see it as a symbol of joy, others as a warning. But regardless of how we view it today, its story began long before civilization, long before history was written, long before anyone understood what fermentation was. It began with a piece of fruit left on the forest floor,